There's a type of man who walks into a room and without saying a word, changes the energy of the space. People straighten their posture. Others hesitate before interrupting him. Some try to act indifferent, but they've already been affected. He's not the richest, nor the most handsome, nor the loudest, but something about him unsettles. Something commands respect. This isn't charisma. This isn't likability. This is aura. And Machiavelli knew, in the war for power, the most dangerous aren't those who speak, but those who force others to think before speaking. Do you want to be admired? Then play to the audience. But if you want to be feared, learn to master the invisible field of perception. Aura isn't what you show. It's what you withhold. It's what others feel, but can't name. You don't build aura with words. You build it with presence, with restraint, with distance, with emotional discipline. In this video, you'll understand why silence intimidates more than shouting, why not reacting is more powerful than winning an argument, and why, for Machiavelli, the most feared man wasn't the one who controlled the throne. It was the one no one was quite sure what he was capable of. This is the aura game, and those who learn to play no longer need to fight. Aura isn't image, it's architecture. Many confuse aura with appearance. They think it's enough to dress well, stand tall, maintain eye contact, and seem confident. But that's just surface. It's packaging. Aura isn't what you wear. It's what you project, even when you're silent. Machiavelli would say, the presence of a powerful man is felt before he is seen. This is because aura isn't built in front of a mirror. It's architected in the invisible, in how you behave when no one is watching, in the discipline you impose on yourself, in how you speak little, but never ask for permission. Common men want to be noticed. Men of aura make others feel small without saying a word, not because they humble others, but because their simple existence forces the weak to question themselves. Aura is an invisible architecture, made of boundaries, of absence, of well-placed silence, of choices that unsettle, but are never explained. That's why many try to imitate it, but fail, because they think it's about physical posture or rehearsed phrases. But aura isn't born from what you rehearse. It emanates from what you have already become. The one who has aura doesn't need to defend himself. He doesn't justify. He doesn't react with anxiety. He commands presence with the way he walks, and with the fact that even in silence, he carries the weight of something he doesn't need to show. Machiavelli knew that true dominance doesn't require demonstration. What truly frightens others is the doubt about what you can do and don't. The man of aura doesn't speak of his limits. He lets others discover them too late. Therefore, aura isn't image. Image is fragile, manipulative, dependent on others' perceptions. Aura is structure, and structure doesn't need to be announced. It is felt. When you stop trying to impress and start operating with calm, containment, and intention, that's when the game changes. Aura isn't created on stage. It's born backstage. And that's exactly why, when you appear, no one can ignore you. The invisible discipline behind presence. Most men want presence, but they live as if they're constantly seeking approval. They react to everything. They comment on everything. They over-explain. And in the midst of this emotional agitation, they wonder, why does no one take me seriously? Machiavelli didn't believe in spontaneous presence. He knew that every man who dominates a room first dominates himself. Aura begins with self-control, not charisma. And here's the truth many refuse. Presence is built in the silence of small decisions. In what you eat, in what you consume, in what you tolerate, in what you pretend not to see. The common man behaves differently, depending on the audience. The man with aura is the same in any environment. He isn't acting. He is rooted. You want to be noticed? Shout. You want to be feared? Master your energy. Nothing draws more attention than a man who refuses the need to show off, cultivating unshakable stability. And this is where invisible discipline comes in. The ability to maintain emotional control when attacked. The choice not to respond when provoked. The strength to keep your gaze steady, even when everything around you trembles. Aura is the impression your stability makes on the unstable. While others move by impulse, you remain serene. While others get lost in anxiety, you observe. While others want to be seen, you force them to look inward. It's in this difference that aura is born, not in the volume of your voice, but in the depth of your silence. Machiavelli said that the wise ruler should be feared more by expectation than by action. You don't need to act often. You just need to show that, if you decide to act, no one will be prepared. And how is this built? With habits no one sees. With choices no one applauds. With firmness no one teaches. You don't develop aura by being intense. You develop aura by being constant. The cold constancy of someone who doesn't need to prove anything. The discipline you cultivate alone will be felt by everyone, even if they never know why. And when your presence carries that kind of weight, you will no longer just be heard. You will be measured. And men who are measured in silence are the only ones who never need to raise their voice. The power of absence as a psychological weapon. Presence impresses, but absence disturbs. And the man who understands this stops chasing attention and starts manipulating the environment with his very absence. Most people measure someone's worth by how often they appear, but Machiavelli saw something else. Scarcity increases value. Absence creates mythology. The man who is always available becomes predictable. The one who is always explaining becomes common. The one who always responds quickly becomes controllable. But the one who disappears without warning, without drama, without explanations, becomes a question mark. And a well-placed question mark can be more powerful than 1,000 declarations. Absence, when well calculated, triggers the insecurity of others. They begin to ask themselves, did I do something wrong? Why didn't he answer? What is he thinking now? You don't need to say anything. They will do the work for you. They will struggle in the silence you left behind. And the more emotional the person, the more they will suffer from your silence. The common man wants to prove his worth with constant presence. The man of aura proves the worth of his presence by disappearing at the right moment. He creates expectation. He creates tension. He creates a void and lets others feel his absence. Do you want to be feared? Learn to disappear. Not out of pride, but out of strategy. Machiavelli would say, he who controls the frequency controls the narrative, and the silence you impose transforms into emotional dominance. Because well-executed absence is not flight, it is command. Being absent doesn't mean disappearing forever. It means interrupting the predictable flow to test the impact of your absence. He who doesn't miss you never truly had your presence. He who becomes restless reveals how much you already dominated the environment. It is in this interval that you observe who starts to imitate you, who tries to replace you, who talks about you in your absence, and who remains silent, awaiting your return. These reactions reveal everything. You don't need to ask. Absence reveals who is weak, who is dependent, who is manipulable. And the most powerful thing of all is that while others waste energy trying to understand, you merely observe and remain above the noise. Most people think a detached person is distant, but Machiavelli knew that such a person is, in fact, free. Free from the need to please. Free from the addiction to validation. Free from the emotional prison that makes the weak predictable. True aura isn't born from charisma. It's born from the impossibility of being emotionally read. When others can't predict your reaction, they hold back. They choose their words more carefully. They retreat because something in you destabilizes their emotional impulses. The average person feels everything and shows everything. If provoked, they respond. If praised, they smile excessively. If ignored, they fall into a crisis. But the man with aura is a different kind of creature. He feels, but he doesn't reveal. He observes, but he doesn't expose himself. He reacts, but with calculation, not with emotion. And this restraint is unsettling because emotion wants to be reciprocated. It wants drama. It wants explanation. It wants reactivity. But the detached man doesn't react. He programs. And because of this, he becomes a dangerous mirror. Because whoever looks at him sees only their own instability reflected. This is how aura is formed, when your stability exposes the fragility of others. Machiavelli warned, he who reveals everything he feels becomes an easy pawn to manipulate. And aura doesn't align with predictability. Aura demands internal mastery. It's not a game of physical strength. It's a game of emotional composure. If you want your presence to be respected, stop being guided by cheap emotions. Stop reacting with your face, with your voice, with your fingers. Learn to remain still amidst the noise. Train yourself not to smile automatically, not to justify yourself impulsively, not to be shaken when discredited. This detachment, this almost unsettling presence of one who does not yield, is what makes others think twice before trying to test you. You don't need to be aggressive. You need to be enigmatic. And the greatest enigma of all is a man who feels but is never rattled. Aura doesn't come from exaggeration. It comes from the emotional elegance of one who knows exactly when to be a stone and when to be a knife. And until then, they remain neutral, inaccessible, indecipherable, and because of that, respected. Most people think silence is an absence, but Machiavelli knew silence is presence in its raw state. When a powerful man falls silent, he doesn't disappear. He dominates the space between words. We live in an age of noise. Everyone wants to talk. Everyone wants to give their opinion. Everyone wants to be understood. And because of this, those who are silent shine. Silence, by contrast, becomes authority. Those who talk all the time are trying to convince. Those who choose when to speak control the moment. That's why men of aura speak little. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that every word spoken reduces mystery. And mystery is the root of the perception of power. The common man tries to fill silence with explanations, but the Machiavellian man knows the more you explain, the more you submit. Silence, when maintained firmly, transforms the other's doubt into insecurity. They begin to wonder, did he disagree? Did he dismiss what I said? Am I exposing myself too much? And the most fascinating thing is that you said nothing. But silence spoke for you. It deconstructed the other from within. The unconquerable force of silence. Machiavelli understood that well-used silence is not empty. It is a frame, a weapon, a mirror that forces the other to listen to themselves. What's more, silence cannot be fought. No one can argue with what hasn't been said. No one can defeat a man who hasn't entered the game. Do you want to dominate a room? Enter in silence. Observe. Sit calmly. Wait for others to speak first. You will become the reference, even without opening your mouth. Because true power isn't about imposing yourself. It's about making others readjust to your presence without you saying a word. Silence is not weakness. It is structure. It's like a magnetic field. The firmer it is, the more it attracts, and the more it oppresses the weak. The aura that silences disquiets. The aura that listens weakens those who talk too much. The aura that does not rush dismantles those who live chasing attention. And in this game, the winner is not the most eloquent. It is the most empty of need. Because what doesn't need to speak to be felt has already won before the first sound. Predictability is comfort, and comfort never generates respect. What repeats becomes disposable. What is deciphered loses value. But what is unpredictable awakens attention, causes tension, commands respect. Most people live trying to be consistent in the eyes of others, always available, always accessible, always the same. And because of this, they are never remembered. They are never feared. Machiavelli didn't seek consistency. He sought advantage. And if for that he needed to be silent when a response was expected, or smile when fury was anticipated. He would do it because respect is born not from predictable constancy, but from calculated instability. The man with aura is not linear. He is strategic, sometimes warm, sometimes indifferent, sometimes present, sometimes absent, sometimes kind, sometimes lethal. This confuses the weak, the unstable, those who always need to know where they stand. And when they realize you don't fit an easy pattern, they retreat. Unpredictability forces others to walk on eggshells. They start to measure their words, to await your reaction, to prepare for a response that might never come. This gives you time, space, and psychological dominance. Predictability is comfort, but the man with aura knows that too much comfort is the beginning of irrelevance, the unseen hand of control. Therefore, he protects his own behavior. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't announce intentions. He doesn't reveal plans. He knows that the enemy who doesn't know your next move is an enemy who errs out of fear. Machiavelli taught that the prince should not be loved or hated with ease. He should be feared for what others cannot predict. And that's why the man with aura doesn't warn before changing. He just changes and lets others adapt or be left behind. With each unexpected reaction, he rewrites his image. And with each new absence, he redefines the value of his presence. Do you want to be respected? Stop being obvious. Don't give anyone emotional routine. Don't be the one who always responds in the same way. Become unpredictable, and you will become the kind of man who, even in silence, makes others hesitate before speaking your name. Before you speak, your body has already spoken, and most people speak wrongly. They walk too fast. They move restlessly. They fidget with their hands, their face, their phone. The body is always apologizing, even if the mouth says nothing. But the man with aura masters the oldest language of power, physical presence. Machiavelli observed that princes who ruled with firmness had one thing in common. It wasn't height. It wasn't physical build. It was the restraint of gestures, the intentionality of movements, the way they occupied space with calm, without anxiety, without rushing to please. A man's body reveals where his mind lives. A hurried body reveals insecurity. A restless body reveals anxiety. But a body that moves with precision reveals authority. And authority doesn't shout. It walks with firm steps, with eyes that don't wander, with an upright spine that doesn't need to be arrogant to be imposing. Common men enter a room and ask for acceptance with their bodies. They try to appear sociable. They seek validation with their gaze. An easy smile, a head that nods too much, shoulders that slump. But the man of aura doesn't move to be accepted. He enters and others adapt. He knows that every gesture communicates an internal structure. Therefore, his movements are slow, intentional, silent. He walks like someone who already knows what's going to happen. He sits like someone who already dominates the space. He looks like someone who has seen everything and is no longer impressed by anything. Machiavelli would say, "He who controls his own body has already won half the war of perception." And it's not about theatricality. It's about concentrated energy. You don't need to look like an actor. You need to look like a man who carries something invisible and dangerous. Posture is nonverbal power. It is dominance without speech. It is a presence that unsettles the fragile and forces the clever to measure their words. Do you want to command without saying anything? Start where everyone else is distracted. Your body. Transform every movement into a silent affirmation. I am not here to ask for space. I am the space. Most people believe that to be noticed, you need to grab attention, talk more, laugh louder, show up all the time. But Machiavelli taught the opposite. The most striking presence is the one that imposes silence around it. You don't need to beg for attention. L'ouvre spirit of intention. You need to become the kind of man who upon entering changes the temperature of the room. And this isn't built with shouts, but with contrast. In a world of urgency, calm commands respect. In an environment of noise, restraint becomes the center. The presence that's impossible to ignore isn't the most flamboyant. It's the most centered, the most solid, the most self-sufficient. It's the man who doesn't need to announce himself, doesn't need to explain himself. And yet, everyone feels when he arrives, and even more so when he leaves. He doesn't fill the space. He alters the perception of the space. The pillars of unignorable presence. And how is this possible? First, he has become scarce. He isn't everywhere. He doesn't get involved in everything. He doesn't respond to every provocation. Second, he never shows anxiety. He doesn't rush his steps. He doesn't gesticulate excessively. He doesn't jump into conversations where he's not invited. Third, he chooses when and with whom he interacts. And because of this, every interaction with him becomes rare and therefore valuable. Aura isn't just what you carry. It's what you withhold. It's what you refuse to give away easily. And the effect of this, people adjust their behavior in your presence. Their speech changes. Their body language changes. Even the emotional tone of the conversation shifts, not because you imposed something, but because your simple presence forced a subtle reorganization of the environment. Machiavelli would say, if they need to adapt to your energy, you've already won the invisible game of power. Making your presence impossible to ignore isn't about calling attention to yourself. It's about becoming an invisible point of reference, a silent axis around which everything revolves. And when that happens, you don't need to stand out. The environment does it for you. What truly intimidates others isn't shouting. It isn't brute force. It isn't appearance. It's the man who needs nothing. The man who expects nothing. The man who depends on no one. This is the unreachable man. Machiavelli observed that the most dangerous of men isn't the one who wants to dominate. It's the one who has already learned to dominate himself. He might lose a position, a relationship, a momentary advantage, and still remain steadfast, because his presence doesn't come from what he has. It comes from what he doesn't need to prove. Do you want to build aura? Start by cutting the emotional ties that make you predictable. The need for approval, the thirst for applause, the addiction to reciprocity. All of this makes you weak, even if you hide it well. True presence is born when you can withdraw without drama, remain silent without guilt, act without explanation, disappear without losing your structure. This type of man causes discomfort because he doesn't engage in emotional games. He doesn't react to blackmail. He doesn't get involved in childish disputes. He doesn't compare himself. He merely observes and moves on. And that's where aura reaches its highest level, because no one can manipulate it, and what cannot be manipulated is naturally respected or feared. Machiavelli would say that true power lies in not having to retaliate. The world bends, not because you demand, but because you remain unshakable where others collapse. Do you want to become unreachable? Then learn to walk with few, speak little, move with intention, and most importantly, no longer need what others use to control you. Because the man who doesn't depend, doesn't explain himself, doesn't justify himself, doesn't retreat. He simply exists, with a presence as silent as it is firm. And that's why, even without raising his voice, he becomes the gravitational center of everything around him. This is true aura. And once it's built, you no longer need to dominate the environment. The environment adjusts to your presence.